A pharmacist comes back from his lunch to the pharmacy. As he approaches, he sees a man outside the pharmacy, clutching onto a pole for dear life, barely breathing, not moving, not twitching a muscle, just standing there, frozen. The pharmacist goes up to his assistant and asks, "What's the matter with that guy? Wasn't he in here earlier?" "Yes, he was," replies the assistant. "He had the most terrible cough, and none of my prescriptions seem to help." "Well, he seems to be fine now." "Sure he does. I gave him a box of laxatives. Now he won't dare cough." An elderly gentleman went to the local drugstore and asked the pharmacist to fill his prescription for Viagra. "How many do you want?" asked the pharmacist. The man replied, "Just a few, maybe half a dozen. I cut each one into 4 pieces." Upon hearing that, the pharmacist said, "That's too small a dose. That won't get you through intercourse." The old fellow said, "Oh, I'm past 90 years old and I don't even think about that anymore. I just want it to stick out enough so I don't pee on my shoes." 3 new corpses are delivered to the morgue one day, each with a smile on their face. The mortician examines each of them and says who they are and their cause of death. First body, a Frenchman aged 60, died making love to his mistress, hence the smile on his face. Second body, an Irishman aged 30, won €1,000 in the lottery, spent it all on whiskey, and died of alcohol poisoning, hence the smile on his face. The inspector then asks, "What about the third body?" The mortician says, "Ah, this is perhaps the most interesting of all. This is Justin, aged 25, a flat earther. He was struck by lightning." "Why is he smiling then?" "He thought he was getting his picture taken." A sick woman was lying on her sickbed with her husband by her side. She turns to the husband and said, "Wife, honey, I have a confession to make." Husband, "Save your strength, my dear." Wife, cuts in, "No, I want to say it so that when I die, my spirit will be at rest. I have been stealing your money and giving it to my boyfriend. You're not the father of our son, Junior. I was the one who stole your gold wristwatch and hid it in your sister's bag so that you'll drive her away. Please forgive me, husband. I know all this. That's why I poisoned you. Keep calm. Let the poison work." A woman is in a coma. The nurses are in a room giving her a sponge bath. One of them is washing her private area and notices that there is a response on the monitor when she touches her. They go to her husband Steve and explain what happened, telling him, "Crazy as this sounds, maybe a little oral sex will do the trick and bring her out of the coma." Steve is skeptical, but they assure him that they'll close the curtains for privacy. Besides, it's worth a try. Steve finally agrees and goes into his wife's room. After a few minutes, the woman's monitor flatlines on no pulse, no heart rate. The nurses run into the room. Steve is standing there and says, "I think she choked." In a city park stood 2 statues, one female named Colette and the other male named Steve. These 2 statues faced each other for many years. Early one morning, an angel appeared before the statues and said, "Since the 2 of you have been exemplary statues and have brought enjoyment to many people, I am giving you your greatest wish. I hereby give you the gift of life. You have 30 minutes to do whatever you desire." And with that command, the statues came to life. Colette and Steve smiled at each other, ran towards some nearby woods, and dove behind a couple of bushes. The angel smiled to himself as he listened to the 2 statues giggling, bushes rustling, and twigs snapping. After 15 minutes, the 2 statues emerged from the bushes, satisfied and smiling. Puzzled, the angel looked at his watch and asked, "You still have 15 minutes. Would you like to continue?" Steve looked at Colette and asked, "Do you want to do it again?" Smiling, Colette said, "Sure, but this time, you hold the pigeon down and I'll shit on its head." A man was sitting at home one evening when the doorbell rang. When he answered the door, a 6-foot-tall cockroach was standing there. The cockroach immediately punched him between the eyes and scampered off. The next evening, the man was sitting at home when the doorbell rang again. When he answered the door, the cockroach was there again. This time, it punched him, kicked him, and karate-chopped him before running away. The third evening, the man was sitting at home when the doorbell rang. When he answered the door, the cockroach was there yet again. It leapt at him and stabbed him several times before running off. The gravely injured man managed to crawl to the telephone and summon an ambulance. He was rushed to intensive care, where they saved his life. The next morning, the doctor was doing his rounds. He asked the man what happened. So the man explained about the 6-foot cockroach's attacks, culminating in the near-fatal stabbing. The doctor thought for a moment and said, "Yes, there's a nasty bug going around." Two ladies of leisure were cruising around town one sunny afternoon, proudly displaying a sign on top of their car that read, "Two fun-loving friends, $50. Naturally, a police officer noticed the sign and pulled them over. He gave them a stern look and said, "Ladies, you're going to need to take that sign down, or I'll have to take you downtown." They sighed in frustration, and just as they were about to comply, another car drove by with a sign that said, "Jesus saves." One of the gals pointed and asked, "Hey, how come they can ride around with a sign and we can't?" The officer smiled and said, "Well, that's about religion." So the two women frowned, peeled off their sign, and drove away, quietly brainstorming. The very next day, the officer sees the same car, back on the road with a new sign. He flips on his lights, thinking he's about to bust them again. But as he gets closer, he reads, "Two fallen angels seeking Peter, $50. The officer laughed so hard, he forgot why he pulled them over in the first place. A man sits sipping lemonade on his front porch when he spots a landscaping crew working a few houses down, but something seems off. There are 3 workers, 2 are frantically digging holes, and one stands nearby, arms crossed, doing absolutely nothing. The man watches, confused. One worker digs a deep hole. The second one fills it right back in, over and over, hole after hole. Eventually, curiosity gets the better of him. He walks over and asks, "Hey, fellas, I've been watching you work for an hour. You dig a hole, he fills it in, and the guy over there just watches. What exactly are you trying to get done?" One of the workers wipes sweat off his brow and says, "Oh yeah, normally we're a tree planting crew. I dig the hole, Jake here fills it in, and Kyle, he's the one who puts the tree in." The man raises an eyebrow. "So, where's Kyle?" The worker sighs. Sick day. First-time driver, full circle payback. Emma had just passed her driving test and was practically glowing with pride and she ran into the house, waved her shiny new license in the air, and said, "Let's go. First official drive." Her dad, mom, and younger brother all piled into the car. Without hesitation, her dad slid into the back seat right behind her. Emma looked at him in the rearview mirror and grinned. Switching it up, huh? After months of teaching me from the front seat, you finally get to relax in the back." Her dad smiled sweetly and said, "Nah, I'm back here to do what you always did. Kick the seat and ask, 'Are we there yet?' every 5 minutes." A nurse was showing some student nurses through the hospital. "This will be the most hazardous section in the hospital for you. The men on this floor are almost well. A doctor is going around the ward with a nurse, and they come to the first bed where the chap is lying half dead. 'Did you give this man 2 tablets every 8 hours?' asks the doctor. 'Oh, no,' replies the nurse. 'I gave him 8 tablets every 2 hours.' At the next bed, the next patient also appears half dead. 'Nurse, did you give this man 1 tablet every 12 hours?' 'Oops, I gave him 12 tablets every 1 hour,' replies the nurse. Unfortunately, at the next bed, the patient is well and truly deceased, not an ounce of life. 'Nurse,' asks the doctor, 'did you prick his boil?' 'Oh my goodness,' replies the nurse. How many nurses does it take to change a light bulb? None. They just have a nursing assistant do it, as much as the doctor orders. How many triage nurses does it take to change a light bulb? 1, but the bulb will have to spend 4 hours in the waiting room. How many doctors does it take to change a light bulb? Only 1, but he has to have a nurse to tell him. Planning to cash her paycheck, a nurse walks into a bank. She reaches into her pocket to pull out a pen to sign her check. Instead of a pen, she finds she has pulled out a rectal thermometer from the pocket. She looks at the rectal thermometer in complete shock. "Oh no," she states in disbelief. "Some ass is my pen." A polar bear is driving his car through the desert when it breaks down. He manages to get the car to a garage, and the mechanic tells him it will take 45 minutes to fix his car, but there's a diner and ice cream shop across the street. So the polar bear goes into the diner, eats a big burger, and then goes into the ice cream shop and has a vanilla sundae to cool off. When he's done, he goes back to the garage and asks the mechanic what was wrong with his car. And the mechanic says, "Looks like you blew a seal." And the polar bear goes, "No, that's just ice cream." A mom and dad were worried about their son not wanting to learn math at the school he was in, so they decided to send him to a Catholic school. After the first day of school, their son comes racing into the house, goes straight into his room, and slams the door shut. Mom and dad are a little worried about this and go to his room to see if he is okay. They find him sitting at his desk doing his homework. The boy keeps doing that for the rest of the year. At the end of the year, the son brings home his report card and gives it to his mom and dad. Looking at it, they see under math an A+. Mom and dad are very happy and ask the son, "What changed your mind about learning math?" The son looked at mom and dad and said, "Well, on the first day when I walked into the classroom, I saw a guy nailed to the plus sign at the back of the room behind the teacher's desk, and I knew they meant business." The parents were very disappointed in the grades that their son brought home. "The only consolation I can find in these awful grades," lamented the father, "is that I know he never cheated during his exams." "Teacher, if I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits have you got?" Patty, 7. Teacher, no, listen carefully again. "If I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits have you got?" Patty, 7. Teacher, let's try this another way. "If I give you 2 apples and 2 apples and another 2 apples, how many apples have you got?" Patty, 6. Teacher, good. Now if I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits have you got? Patty, 7. Teacher, how on earth do you work out that 3 lots of 2 rabbits is 7? Patty, I've already got 1 rabbit at home now. Teacher, Milton, how can you prove the earth is round? Milton, I can't. Besides, I never said it was. Billy and Willie were at Sunday school studying about Noah's Ark. On the way home, Willie asked, "Do you think Noah did much fishing?" "How could he?" said Billy. "He only had 2 worms." It was a practical session in the psychology class. The professor showed a large cage with a male rat in it. The rat was in the middle of the cage. Then, the professor put a piece of cake on one side and put a female rat on the other side. The male rat ran towards the cake and ate it. Then, the professor changed the cake and replaced it with some bread. The male rat again ran towards the bread. This experiment went on with the professor changing the food every time. And every time the male rat ran towards the food item and never towards the female rat. Professor asked the students, "This experiment shows that food is the greatest strength and attraction. Do you agree?" Then Johnny, one of the students from the back row, said, "Sir, why don't you change the female rat? This one might be his wife." The professor stood straight up his finger, pointing towards the student, and said, "You just got an A." A husband and wife entered the dentist's office. The husband said, "I want a tooth pulled. I don't want gas or Novocaine because I'm in a terrible hurry. Just pull the tooth as quickly as possible." "You're a brave man," said the dentist. "Now show me which tooth it is." The husband turns to his wife and says, "Open your mouth and show the dentist which tooth it is, dear." Dentist begging the patient, "Could you help me? Could you give out a few of your loudest, most painful screams?" Patient, "Why?" "Doc, it isn't all that bad this time." Dentist, "There are so many people in the waiting room right now, and I don't want to miss the 4 o'clock ball game." Patient, "It must be tough spending all day with your hands in someone's mouth." Dentist, "I just think of it as having my hands in their wallet." One evening, a man was at home watching TV and eating peanuts. He'd toss them in the air, then catch them in his mouth. In the middle of catching one, his wife asked a question, and as he turned to answer her, a peanut fell in his ear. He tried and tried to dig it out, but succeeded in only pushing it in deeper. He called his wife for assistance, and after hours of trying, they became worried and decided to go to the hospital. As they were ready to go out the door, their daughter came home with her date. After being informed of the problem, their daughter's date said he could get the peanut out. The young man told the father to sit down, then shoved 2 fingers up the father's nose and told him to blow hard. When the father blew, the peanut flew out. The mother and daughter jumped and yelled for joy. The young man insisted that it was nothing, and the daughter brought the young man out to the kitchen for something to eat. Once he was gone, the mother turned to the father. The mother said, "That's wonderful. Isn't he smart? What do you think he's going to be when he grows older?" The father replied, From the smell of his fingers, our son-in-law. Three guys were talking in the local bar. The manager was so sure that its bouncer was the strongest man around that it offered a standing $1,000 bet that no one could beat him. The challenge was that the landlord would squeeze a lemon until all the juice ran out into a beer glass, then hand the lemon to the customer. Anyone who could squeeze even one more drop out of the lemon would win the money. Over the years, many people had tried this. Truck drivers, weightlifters, karate masters, and all had failed. Then one day, this geeky little fellow with heavy black-rimmed glasses came into the bar and asked if he could try the challenge. After the laughter had subsided, the landlord said that it was only fair that the man be given a chance at the bet, so he picked up a lemon and started squeezing. Once he was done, he handed the remains to the little man, who promptly squeezed out 4 more drops of juice onto the bar. Everyone looked on in amazement as the landlord handed over the prize and asked, "What do you do for a living that has given you such strength? Are you a lumberjack, a weightlifter, or what?" "No," the man replied. "I work for the IRS." TV anchor interviewing a farmer. Q&A. What do you feed your goats? Farmer, black one or white one? Anchor, the white one? Farmer, grass, anchor. And the black one? Farmer, I give her grass too? Anchor, where do they sleep? Farmer, which one, black or white? Anchor, one. Farmer, outer room of the farm. Anchor and the black one. Farmer, also the outer room of the farm. Anchor in an angry manner. Idiot, if you do the same to both, then why do you ask every time white or black? Farmer, because the white one is mine. Anchor, and the black one? Farmer, also mine. Steve went into a pharmacy and asked to talk to a male pharmacist. The woman he was talking to said that she was the pharmacist and that she and her sister owned the store, so there were no males employed there. She then asked if she could help him. Steve said that it was something that he would be much more comfortable discussing with a male pharmacist. The female pharmacist assured him that she was completely professional and whatever it was that he needed to discuss, he could be confident that she would treat him with the highest level of professionalism. Steve agreed and began by saying, "This is tough for me to discuss, but I have a permanent erection. It causes me a lot of problems and severe embarrassment. So I was wondering what you could give me for it." The pharmacist said, "Just a minute, I'll go talk to my sister." When she returned, she said, "We discussed it at length, and the absolute best we can do is 1/3 ownership of the shop, a company car, and $3,000 a month for living expenses." A kid goes to his dad and asks, "Dad, what are politics?" His dad replies, "Put it this way. I am the breadwinner of the family, so I am capitalism. Your mom is the owner of the money, so she is the government. The government is the provider for the people, so you are the people. Your baby brother will be the future, and the nanny is the working class. Now think about that." So he went to bed. He was woken by his brother. The baby had pooped in his diaper. He went to tell his parents, but he only found his mom asleep in the bed. He didn't want to wake her, so he went to the nanny. The door was locked. He checked through a hole and saw the dad in bed with the nanny. He went back to bed. The next morning, he went to his dad and said, "Dad, I know what you mean now." "You do? Tell me." "Okay, while capitalism is working class, the government is sound asleep, while the people are watching the future being pooped on." A leprechaun walks into a bar, and he sees a sign that says, "Win a pot of gold if you can make the donkey laugh." The leprechaun decided to go for it, and he succeeded in making the donkey laugh. So he goes to the bartender and asks for his pot of gold. The bartender says, "Okay, but first you have to tell us how you did it." The leprechaun says, "I can't tell you. It's a leprechaun secret." So the bartender says, "Then I can't give you the pot of gold." The leprechaun gets very angry and walks off. He comes back the next day and sees a sign that says, "Win a pot of gold if you can make the donkey cry." So he tries it, and he makes the donkey cry. He goes up to the bartender and asks for his pot of gold. But the bar attendant tells him, "First you have to tell me how you did it." So the leprechaun says, "All right, yesterday I told him that I have a bigger and today I showed him." An old farmer went to town to see a movie. The ticket agent asked, "Sir, what's that on your shoulder?" The old farmer said, That's my pet rooster, Chucky. Wherever I go, Chucky goes. I'm sorry, sir, said the ticket agent. We don't allow animals in the theater. The old farmer went around the corner and stuffed the bird down his pants. He returned to the booth, bought a ticket, and entered the theater. He sat down next to two old widows named Mildred and Marge. The movie started, and the rooster began to squirm. The old farmer unzipped his pants so Chucky could stick his head out and watch the movie. Marge, whispered Mildred. What? Said Marge. I think this guy next to me is a pervert, said Mildred. What makes you think that? Asked Marge. He unzipped his pants and he has his thing out, whispered Mildred. Well, don't worry about it, said Marge. At our age, we've seen them all. I thought so, said Mildred, but this one is eating my popcorn. Bob was talking to his friend at the bar, and he said, I don't know what to get my wife for her birthday. She has everything, and besides, she can afford to buy anything she wants, so I'm stuck. His friend said, I have an idea. Why don't you make up a certificate saying she can have 60 minutes of great any way she wants it? She'll probably be thrilled. Bob decided to take his friend's advice. The next day at the bar, his friend said, Well, did you take my suggestion? Yes, I did, Bob replied. Did she like it? Oh, yes, she jumped up, thanked me, kissed me on the forehead, and ran out the door yelling, I'll be back in an hour. A secretary for a foreign embassy was entertaining a wealthy foreign ambassador during lunch at a very expensive restaurant in uptown New York. The ambassador was so enthralled by the beauty and presence of the secretary that he asked her to marry him. The secretary was startled but remembered that her boss told her never to insult foreign dignitaries, so she decided to let him down easy. I'll only marry you under 3 conditions. Anything, said the ambassador. First, you must buy me a 14-carat gold wedding band with a 72-carat diamond, along with a 28-inch studded matching necklace for our engagement. Without hesitation, the ambassador picked up his cellular phone, called his personal accountant, told him the instructions, and said, Yes, I buy. The secretary thought that her first request was too easy, so she thought of a more difficult situation. Second, I want you to build me a 58-acre mansion in the richest part of the Poconos, along with a 40-acre summer home in the sweetest vineyards of Italy. The ambassador picked up his phone, called his personal broker in New York, then called another broker in Italy. And after his quick conversation, he said, Yes, I build. The secretary was very startled and knew she must think of a final request that would be impossible to live up to. Finally, she said, I'll only marry you if you have a 10-inch. A sad face befell the ambassador, and he cupped his face in his hands. After weeping in his native language for a few minutes, the ambassador slowly lifted his head and said, Okay, I cut. A blonde goes into a wide message center to send a message to her mother in Poland. When the man tells her it will be $300, she exclaims, I don't have any money, but I would do anything to get a message to my mother in Poland. To that, the man asks, Anything? And the blonde says, Yes, anything. With that, the man says, Follow me. He walks into the next room and tells her, Come in and close the door. She does. He then says, Get on your knees. She does. He then says, Take down my zipper. She does. He then says, Go ahead, take it out. With that, she takes it out and takes hold of it with both hands. The man then says, Well, go ahead. She brings her mouth closer to it, and while holding it close to her lips, she says, Hello, Mom. Little Mary and little Johnny were 8 years old. They fell madly in love and wanted to get married, so they went to Mary's dad and told him that they were to get married. Mary's father thought this was very cute and questioned them. But where will you live? Little Johnny had thought of everything, so he replied, Mary's room is bigger than mine, so we would live there. Very good, replied Mary's father. And where would you get money to survive? Asked Mary's dad. I get $10 a week in allowance, said Johnny, and Mary gets $5, so we would have enough to survive. Mary's father was thinking how cute that they have all this planned, but was sure they would not have an answer for his next question, so he asked, But what if Mary and you have little babies? What then? Little Johnny replied, I wouldn't worry about that one. I will just keep doing her up I have been. 3 dogs are at the vet in the waiting room. When the first dog asks the second dog what he's in for, he answers, My master bought a brand new carpet the other day, and at the first opportunity I soiled it, so now I've been brought here to be put to sleep. So, what are you here for? The first dog replies grimly, I'm also being put to sleep. My master had a table with a collection of expensive vases, and while I was chasing my tail, accidentally bumped into the table and broke them all. The two dogs then look over and ask the third dog what he's in for. The third dog answers, the reason I'm here is the other day my master stepped out of the shower and she bent over. I couldn't resist, so I jumped her from behind and took her like a wild animal. So I guess you're also here to be put to sleep, says the first dog. The third dog answers, nope, I'm here to get my nails clipped. A beautiful woman loved to garden, but couldn't seem to get her tomatoes to turn red. One day, while taking a stroll, she came upon a neighbor who had the most beautiful garden full of huge red tomatoes. The woman asked the gentleman, what do you do to get your tomatoes red? The gentleman responded, well, twice a day I stand in front of my tomato garden and expose myself, and my tomatoes turn red from blushing so much. The woman was so impressed, she decided to try doing the same thing to her tomato garden to see if it would work. So twice a day for 2 weeks, she exposed herself to her garden, hoping for the best. One day the gentleman was passing by and asked the woman, by the way, how did you make out? Did your tomatoes turn red? No, she replied, but my cucumbers are enormous. A man is lying in bed in a hospital with an oxygen mask over his mouth. A young nurse appears to sponge his face and hands. Nurse, he mumbles from behind the mask. Are my black? Embarrassed, the young nurse replies, I don't know. I'm only here to wash your face and hands. He struggles again to ask, Nurse, are my black? Again, the nurse replies, I can't tell. I'm only here to wash your face and hands. The ward nurse passes by and sees the man getting a little distraught. So she marches over to inquire what is wrong. Nurse, he mumbles, are my black? Being a nurse, she is undaunted. She whips back the bedclothes, pulls down his pajama trousers, moves his out of the way, has a good look, pulls up the pajamas, replaces the bedclothes, and announces, nothing is wrong with them. At this, the man pulls off his oxygen mask and asks again, are my test results back? In school one day, the teacher decided that in science class, she would teach about the elements. So she stood in the front of the class and said, children, if you could have one raw element in the world, what would it be? Little Stevie raised his hand and said, I would want gold because gold is worth a lot of money, and I could buy a Porsche. The teacher nodded and called on little Susie. Little Susie said, I would want platinum because platinum is worth more than gold, and I could buy a Ferrari. The teacher smiled and then called on little Johnny. Little Johnny stood up and said, I would want silicon. The teacher said, why, Johnny? He responded by saying, because my mom has 2 bags of it, and you should see all the sports cars outside our house. She spent the first day packing her belongings into boxes, crates, and suitcases. On the second day, she had the movers come and collect her things. On the third day, she sat down for the last time at their beautiful dining room table by candlelight, put on some soft background music, and feasted on a pound of shrimp, a jar of caviar, and a bottle of Chardonnay. When she had finished, she went into each and every room and deposited a few half-eaten shrimp shells dipped in caviar into the hollow of the curtain rods. She then cleaned up the kitchen and left. When the husband returned with his new girlfriend, all was bliss for the first few days. Then slowly, the house began to smell. They tried everything, cleaning and mopping and airing the place out. Vents were checked for dead rodents, and carpets were steam cleaned. Air fresheners were hung everywhere. Exterminators were brought in to set off gas canisters, during which they had to move out for a few days. And in the end, they even paid to replace the expensive wool carpeting. Nothing worked. People stopped coming over to visit. Repairmen refused to work in the house. The maid quit. Finally, they could not take the stench any longer and decided to move. A month later, even though they had cut their price in half, they could not find a buyer for their stinky house. Word got out, and eventually, even the local realtors refused to return their calls. Finally, they had to borrow a huge sum of money from the bank to purchase a new place. The ex-wife called the man and asked how things were going. He told her the saga of the rotting house. She listened politely and said that she missed her old home terribly and would be willing to reduce her divorce settlement in exchange for getting the house back. Knowing his ex-wife had no idea how bad the smell was, he agreed on a price that was about 1/10 of what the house had been worth. but only if she were to sign the papers that very day. She agreed, and within the hour, his lawyers delivered the paperwork. A week later, the man and his new girlfriend stood smirking as they watched the moving company pack everything to take to their new home, including the curtain rods.